All right, this is a case that I assigned a guy in Puerto Rico. It's kind of an example of good surveillance, bad surveillance. You have a situation where there's no place to park on the street, not necessarily. There are probably some cars scattered here and there, but most people have their cars parked inside their driveway, inside that gate. But you can see how he's shaking here, that he doesn't have his camera on a tripod to begin with. When I first get there, the first thing I do is zoom in on the house, make sure my focus is good, have my camera on a tripod, and then I'm ready to go. If he comes out, boom, I'm just hitting record. So this tells me he wasn't ready. Now as we continue to watch this, you can see the guy comes out. Now typically we would stick with the head at the top of the screen, feet at the bottom. We don't want to be zooming in, zooming out too much. We should be here and here. But it's good activity. This is what we want. We do want, to show the guy out and about. He's pretty close where he is. The guy walks across the street. Now, look at this thing that's in the way of the investigator. Something inside his car, Rio Investigations, is on the front, on his dashboard.
Yeah, is that the front of the vehicle he's shooting from?
Yeah. He's dipped down. He has no cover because he's not shooting out the back. He's trying to hide. He has the camera up. Now he's backed way out. We can see the inside of his car off here to the left. You can even see what appears to be a little bit of smog. Now this is good video. He might be getting too close because when the guy stands up, then you don't see him again. Just keep your camera steady, top and bottom. That's all you have to do. The zooming in and zooming out effect just takes away from the quality of the film. It distracts people from what the activity is. But the fact that his business card is here is just very poor planning. I like the fact that the guy's bent over. Okay, I think it was a knee injury, but you don't need to shoot in on the knee. Just keep the guy in the picture and try not to go in, out, in, out, in, out. That's just not necessary.
Yeah, because you can see from this view itself, there's nothing on the knee. So to try to go in and out or show the knee, it's really no effect.
Yeah, right.
Moves it.
See, it just could have been so much better if you think he's got the car reversed, just sitting there the whole time. It could have been picture perfect. But instead, we have the steering wheel, we have this stuff on his front, and what he's doing, he's like stooped way down. He's sitting way down like this, and he's trying to film, all slouched in his seat. So he's trying to hold the camera. It's just not the way. The chances of getting caught would just be too great like this. This is not what I would consider a professional job. This is a half-assed attempt at trying to do your job. Could you imagine the FBI out doing surveillance like this in a life or death situation? No. And
I would hope not.
And I try to teach my guys that every case they should approach like a life or death situation. Like, you absolutely do not want to get caught. You absolutely want to be as discreet as possible. You don't want anybody to know that you were there. So I try to stress all those things, and this would just be totally unacceptable. It floors me, like how anybody could do something like that. You get some jogging inside, With a little bit of work, that could have been perfect video. It could have been really good video. Now, the guy couldn't find his house. I had to call that guy in order to get driving directions to his house. Because the investigator couldn't find it.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
2008, you have no kind of GPS system?
In Puerto Rico, they go by the kilometer marking on the highway,
Okay.
and then you say that you live in such and such a neighborhood, but the houses aren't always necessarily marked. Because the mailboxes are in cluster boxes out on the main road. So house address is not that important. Okay, here's another video. This is a personal injury claim. Now, I will fess up, this was shot by me. Do you see any obstructions in my window?
Nope.
The garage door opened, so I didn't know what was going on, and then boom, a car came and pulled in, 547. My girl was born with a hip problem. I am free holding it. If I wasn't, yeah. And I'm pretty far away, which makes it a little bit harder.
And she was born with a hip problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born with a hip problem, and she had surgery by one of our doctors to try to help her out. And she now claims that she's just in so much pain that the surgery made it worse. So she was supposedly not able to do too much, mostly sedentary, staying around the house, and that she had just had a newborn child. Well, when I got there, she wasn't home. There's the newborn. She takes out of the back seat. She was gone all day. I had gotten there late because I figured they told me she wasn't working. It turns out she works for a law firm, a personal injury law firm.
Okay.
So I shoot film of her arriving home that day, and then go back out the next day. This is the next day. 8:02 a.m. Garage door opens. What time did I get there?
6 o'clock.
All right. Garage door opens. Here she comes. She's in her PJs. Got the little baby. What we didn't see was there was another girl, small girl, that entered the other side. So she's taken the one girl to school. She's staying home this day with the baby. I'm going to fast forward it ahead a little bit. She does have that limp, but you know, that's the doctors need to determine whether that's before, after, more significant than it was prior to her having the operation, and all that other good stuff. Now here they are entering the school line to drop the kids off at school. Here she is back at the house, taking the little baby again out, and going back in. Later that day, she gets a visit by another girl that looks very similar to her. I think it's her sister. She bangs on the door, and then finally gets in after about 5 minutes. And this was the car that she had drove in. Next thing I know, the garage door opens, and they're all headed out. They're going to go somewhere for... There's my girl right there. She's taking the baby. She's able to carry on her everyday activities. What you have to remember is that if you have two guys and both of them fell from a building and they both broke their back, one guy stays at home and the injury has totally destroyed his life. He's a recluse, he's in too much pain, he doesn't feel like doing anything. His wife left him because he's He's become psychologically damaged because of all the pain he's in. Now the other one fell from a building too. Same exact accident. Same exact accident. Same exact injuries. The only difference is that he's going on with his life as normal. He still has the same pain. Everything's the same. He's just coping with it differently. Okay? If you had to put them on a sliding scale and give one $5 million because it totally ruined his life, could you see giving the other guy $4 million?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So what did you save your client by going out and finding out he's able to go out? Yeah, he's in pain. Yes, he limps, but he can go shopping. He can do this. He can do that. And when you do the other guy, you do surveillance on the other guy, he doesn't do anything. So by getting that little bit of activity of them out and about, and you save your client $1 million, was it worth your $1,000 bill you sent them?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And that's what we're after. I'm not out there to make any decisions about anything. Sometimes you ask me, well, what was their injury? What was the story on that? You know what? It really doesn't matter to me. I'm out there to document a day in their life. What are they doing? Now, sure, knowing some of the other things helps me with my investigation. But at the same time, if they're out and about, I'm going to be videotaping them. I'm not going to be particular and videotape only some aspects of what they're doing. I'm videotaping everything. We will let the jury see it. We will let the jury decide. Now they eventually leave the house after about 15 minutes. You know women, they always have something they got to do.
Always. And
look, the sister is handicapped too. Son of a gun. What's the chances of that? So, let's see. Their sister's handicapped. Do they eventually get out of the car here? Let's see. Come on. Give me a break. There they go. Okay. She gets out. Looks pretty good. I mean, she's moving around.
Would that be that the sister may be using her handicap
Yeah.
parking permit?
Yeah. But if she was working, why didn't she at work?
Yeah.
I think it was her handicap sticker. So, my girl here is not only working for a plaintiff's attorney. See, one leg's shorter than the other is what it is.
So that's a permanent
Yeah.
limp.
Yeah, she's always gonna have that.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to law school at night. She's here shopping because it's back to school, tax-free, September 10th, weekend, and she's buying all her stuff, and she's enrolling in law school at night. So that's my girl. You don't see my windshield. You never see the inside of my car, okay? Now, granted, I might move a little bit here and there, but overall, I'm trying to keep her head at the top, her feet at the bottom. I'm not zooming in. I'm not zooming out. I'm going maybe left and right. I'm panning.
It is more of a natural eyesight visual.
All right. Now you say, what does it take to get surveillance sometimes like that? Well, you know, depending on where you are and what type of environment you're in, it might be very tough. Here I am out in a horse farm in Melbourne, and I have my net. I actually drove down the turnpike, or 95, parked my car up on 95, went down the side of the hill, through some marsh, and then trucked through the woods in order to come up on this horse farm. If you've ever been in West Melbourne, it gets very rural, very country. A lot of cowboys, big horse country right here in Melbourne. And this was a case where a guy would bring his horse and he housed it here, and he would come and take the horse out and just run it around the rink. Now the purpose of this tape was, I had set this up because those are my socks drying on the top. I did a little interview for Survivor because I wanted to go on Survivor.
Oh, okay. Because I
let him know.
your bare feet there. I said, what? You have any bare feet also?
Yeah, because my shoes are completely wet. I'm drying them out. And I wanted to tell Survivor that I'm surviving every day out in the elements in the job that I do. And that, you know, I would be a good candidate for the TV show, but I never sent it in. Now that's a little bigger version of the chair. You can see my tripod right in front of the chair.
Yeah.
And then my camera would normally be on there, but I'm holding it. That's my surveillance tape. I have an extra tape in just to do this little segment, just to let you know what a real live surveillance situation setup would look like. Now that's a marsh, mosquitoes, and of course that was my blind that you saw. See if I can bring it back up and just freeze it.
Property-wise on that, so like you said, there's no.
I'm on private property, okay? But
Unless you get caught or someone asks you to leave.
Right. Trespass means if it's not posted, if it's posted, then you shouldn't be on it. And you could get cited for trespass. But if it's just private property, like in this case, first of all, it's open to the public. It's a public horse boarding and training grounds.
Okay.
Okay? So I have a right just like anybody else. If you hang a shingle out in front of your house that says that you do welding, I can come to your door, knock on the door and say, hey, can you weld this for me? And if I had a little hidden camera and I videotaped while you were welding, well then that would be okay as well, because I didn't entrap you. I didn't get you to do something you wouldn't normally do. You had the sign hanging out front. So number one, I'm entitled to go on your property because you're open to the public. I have every right just like anybody else. Just because I'm an undercover investigator doesn't mean I can't go where other people of the general public can. So in this particular case, we have a horse farm. It's trying to freeze it, but it won't let me freeze. This is what I wanted to show you was my net. The netting there that I have across two trees. And then I'll sit behind that net. And yes, the guys from the horse farm could come out and say, what are you doing? And I'd say, nothing. Why? And they'd say, what do you mean nothing? I want you off my property. I'm not going to give them any information.
Right.
You know, let them just wonder what the heck I was doing there. Sure, I'm a strange looking character set up with all this video gear and everything. But the moment I open my mouth, I might just give them one piece of information that's going to let them know who it is, who I'm watching. So it's best to just keep your mouth shut, grab your gear, and head out the door. Let's talk about, let's go to the very beginning of your book. Let's talk about 493.
Okay.
Like you heard me say before, 493 was set up to protect the public. Sure, it's rules and regulations for us, but the reason why they put rules and regulations on us is because they want to make sure that we don't do anything that's going to, violate the public's trust or do something something we shouldn't be doing. In private investigations, we have several licenses. We have the very bottom of the food chain, which is the CC license. That's the license everybody starts out with. As a private investigator intern, it's a Class CC license. The next license up from that is a Class C. That's your full-fledged private investigator's license. After that, typically you have an agency. If it's a very large agency and it has lots of investigators, they're going to have a manager, which will have an M license. M. And then, of course, all those licenses work for one agency, which is called the A agency. Now, if the A agency wants to operate several locations, maybe they're in Orlando, they're in Jacksonville, and they're in Miami. Every one of those offices have to have a license. However, one of the offices will be considered the main office, the A office. All the other ones will be considered the AA branch, the AA Jacksonville branch, the AA Miami branch. So when you see AA on the test, it says the AA license represents the blank office of an agency. The answer is the branch office of an agency.
One question though.
Yes.
The CC and the C. I'm reading the CC, that's your intern licenseship that you must possess. Is there a timeline in order to get from the CC to the C?
Yes, 2 years. You need to maintain a CC license for a period of 2 years. And also, Mr. C, let me ask you one question. As part of this training process, we're recording our conversations. Do I have your permission to do so?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The CC license, one must hold a CC license for 2 years. That means 40 hours a week times 52 weeks times 2 years. That's how long that has to be. So it's not just 2 years, two calendar years. It's 2 years of 40 hours a week. So you theoretically could have a CC license for 4 years if you're only able to work maybe 20 hours a week. So when you get someone to sponsor you, make sure you tell him what you're doing. Make sure you tell him that you're reviewing stuff on the internet, that you're reading books, that you're doing a lot of work, that you're putting in 20, 30 hours a week into this field. And then if he gives you a case and wants you to look something up, that you spend another 10 hours on that so that you can continuously be working on getting all those hours in.
Which means documentation.
Which means documentation, taking notes. Now, it's a requirement of the state that every 6 months your C sponsor fills out a biannual report outlining what experience you have gained to date. Those forms are available on the Division of Licensing website, the biannual report.
Would that requirement come from the agency's manager's license? I guess person that's actually the manager of the agency?
Well, I always say it should be the responsibility of the CC.
Okay.
Because nobody in the office really cares whether your time is documented or not. It's no sweat off their brow if they don't do it. You're the only one that gets hurt by it not being done. So what I suggest is that you go on the website, you print out that form, you put down all of your experience that you've had for that 6 months, and you give it to your sponsor, and you ask them to review it, sign it, and then you send it into the state.
Okay.
You take control of that.
Okay.
All licenses are valid for 2 years. So the CC is valid for 2 years. The C is valid for 2 years. The M license is valid for 2. We call those licenses that walk. That you put them in your pocket. They're licenses for people. They're good for 2 years. They walk. The license of the agency, this agency doesn't walk anywhere. Okay, it's 3 years. Those are the only difference. The CC, the C, the M license, good for 2 years. The A agency, good for 3 years.
The A and the AA.
Correct, A and AA. The
recertification, how is that done? A renewal, I'm sorry.
The renewal.
Yeah.
The renewal is simply just a form that you fill out, a little postcard form, and a fee. If for some reason you have 3 months before your license expires, you will have 3 months to renew it. So 3 months before it expires, you'll get a little postcard in the mail that says, "Hey, we need an updated photograph of you and your check." Now if you haven't been fingerprinted in the last 3 years, I believe it is, they might ask you for an updated fingerprint card as well.
Okay. If you let your license expire, and do you have to, say for instance, you're up to a C license, you've worked in the field 2, 3, 4 years, you decide to back off, so it expired, do you have to start all over again with another CC when you decide to come into the business?
You could just apply for the C license again. They may have you test again. That happened to me most recently.
Mm-hmm.
I had a C investigator's license, and then I wasn't really practicing in the field. I was mostly just managing, so I kept my M license, but not my C. And I always thought that the M trumped the C. I figured if you had an M, that was even higher than a C.
Right.
So did a lot of my friends. I know guys right now that are practicing that just have M's, don't even realize that they still need to get a C. But I found that out, having taught this class. I found out that every single agency has to have a C, 1C licensed investigator, and that you cannot do investigations unless you're a C. M's can't do investigations. So I applied for my C license, and I had to go take the test, which was, kind of silly, but I took the test, and I was even thinking about applying for a CC, because while you're waiting for your C, you can be a CC and work right away if you have a sponsor.
Okay.
And M's can sponsor people, so I figured I'd sponsor myself, but they wouldn't let me do that either. So I basically just had to wait until my C was approved, which it was. Now, this class of the 40-hour training, this is a new thing. It started September 2008. Prior to that, there was no schooling even required for licensure. Now they changed the law again. This course used to be broken up into a 16 and a 24-hour course, 2 separate courses. They no longer accept those 2 separate courses. Now the course has to be taken in one complete 40 hours, which is what I did from the start. I never wanted to break it up. I kind of thought it was silly to begin with. So we'll get out of that. Now, firearms. As a C investigator or a CC, you can carry a firearm as long as you have a G license. Now, the G license is what a guard also carries. A security guard is a D licensee. A private investigator is a C or CC licensee. But in order to carry a gun, they make you get another license, which is called a G. That G gives you training on how to carry a gun during the course of your employment. It doesn't mean you can just carry it like a concealed weapons permit. It's not a concealed weapons permit. You can't carry it around all the time when you're shopping, wherever you are. A G license is only good to carry the firearm while you're working.
Okay, question on that. Mm-hmm. So if you have, myself personally, I have a concealed weapon permit. However, if I'm working, I have to have a G license permit to carry that weapon as I'm working.
Correct. Okay. Correct. For a private investigator to carry that weapon, you must have a G license. And it also, your employer has to know that you're carrying that weapon, and it has to be necessary. It has to be a reason for you to have that weapon while you're on duty.
As a private investigator.
As a private investigator.
Okay, so now I get it. So that's why I know you told me earlier that you don't have a really need to carry a weapon. So there's really not a true need as a private investigator to really have to carry a weapon.
I think if you're out there in the general public and you're acting like the guy next door, and that you're always just trying to get help, or you're trying to, so then why do you need, we would be saying that everybody needs to carry a gun out there. Now, if you're out there acting like a detective, pushing people around or asking tough questions, then somebody might, have something out for you. Well, that's why I don't think that whole mentality is the right approach to private investigations. So, I had a good friend that carried a gun in Miami. Just told me, John, things are bad down here. I'm not going to be out going around without a gun. So he's following a guy, out in like Hallandale, out west in Miami. And the guy catches on that he's being followed. So the guy plays a little game, he goes here and he goes there and he turns back and everything. And the investigator's just staying with him. And the guy got pissed. So the guy called the police and said, this guy's following me, he's harassing me, and he pointed a gun at me. Now the police come. And they ask the private investigator, are you carrying? And the private investigator says, yes, I have a gun. Okay, now you have a problem. No matter what, you got a problem. Because the police officer doesn't have a crystal ball. He doesn't know what really happened. He only knows a couple of facts. Number one party said you pointed a gun at him. During his investigation, he found out that the investigator had a gun. You're almost proving the guy's case. Now, what is that police officer to do? Is he supposed to say, kind of like the good old boy system, and say, well, even though maybe the private investigator really did it, well, you're a private investigator, I'll get rid of this guy for you. Is it his call to make that decision? Or should he say, listen guys, he said, I don't know. Let's let the judge figure it out. That's why we have courts. Well, my eyes just got real big because I wasn't doing anything wrong as a private investigator. Now all of a sudden I'm caught up in something that's just taken away from my work. I might have to go to court. I might have to try to explain myself. It's not worth it, trust me.
Because he also didn't have a G license to be carrying the weapon for the job anyway, right?
Yeah, he probably didn't have a G, exactly. Yeah. Because our company didn't allow people to carry guns on the job. Now, can we stop investigators from having a gun in their own car, in their own glove compartment? We try to prevent it. But I think that there are some constitutional laws that might kick into effect here because not too long ago, there's a lot of guys that have guns in their trucks and they drive to work and they park their truck in the parking lot. And the company might have a policy against no guns, but it's that guy's truck. And they say, well, it's our parking lot. Well, at what point does one person's rights start to infringe on another? You know, is him having a gun in his truck, you know, what is it doing to that employer?
Nothing really.
Well, if you ask the NRA, they're going to say nothing. You're right. And that's his truck, and he's got every right to carry a firearm. Now, if you ask the employer, they're going to say, well, that's our parking lot, and we don't want him, you know, having a gun in his truck. And then he says, on our property. So, you know, so then he says, what do you want me to do, park on the street, you know, outside of work? I can do that. You know, now the employer seems like they're the bad guy, that they're against, you know, guys that hunt in the morning and then come to work. And if you don't think that happens, you know, drive up to West Virginia, North Carolina, or Pennsylvania. These guys, they go hunting in the morning. And then they go to work. And they're not throwing their gun out on the side of the road before they get to work or taking them home. They're coming, you know, they got them in the car somewhere. We had, at Bishop Moore Catholic High School, we had a guy that hunted in the morning, had guns in his truck on school property. He was a teacher.
Was it exposed?
No, but everybody knew he had it.
Everybody had it.
Yeah. Nobody ever said anything. So, about the only, when it comes to firearms, the only thing you need to know is that you got to be over the age of 21 to have a firearm, to carry a firearm. You have to have a G license, which means you have gone through the necessary training about guns on the job. And then you need to know the type of gun you can carry. We only have a few. We have a 9mm. 9mm? Yeah. 9mm, 357. You don't have to know all these. 9mm, 357, 38, or a 380. Now the 357 has to have 38 caliber ammunition in it, which is kind of strange. So the question on the test goes like this. Sally, when she went to training, she qualified with a 9mm, but she wants to carry a 357. Well, Sally can't carry a 357 if she qualified at the range with a 9mm. You can only carry, your G license tells what gun you were trained with.
Okay.
You can only carry that gun. Now you can carry up to 2 weapons. You know, a lot of guys, they might carry a gun down here and a gun up here. You can carry 2 weapons, but they both have to be the same weapons you qualified with. Now you could qualify with a 380 and a 38, or a 380 and a 9mm, and then you could carry those 2 different guns. But if you just qualified with 38s and you want to carry 2 9mm, you can't do that. So the answer is you got to carry the gun that you qualified with. How many guns can you carry?
No more than 2.
No more than 2, right.
Go back to that, when you said, but with the 357, you can use 348?
38.
338 ammunition?
No, just 38.
38 ammunition?
Yep, caliber ammunition. Doesn't sound right, but I guess a 357 will allow you to put 38 ammo in it.
Guess so.
Now there are some reasons why we have the G, and some of the things that they teach you is quite interesting. Number one, you go out on a range and you learn how to use your gun. You also learn different things, like, you know, have you ever seen a undercover police officer, and he has his gun exposed? He's in regular clothing and he has his gun on his side. What do you notice about him other than his plain clothing? You notice that he has like a badge hanging around his neck or on his belt?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. That's his uniform. He has a uniform on. He may be undercover, but he shows the badge because he has his gun exposed. As a private investigator, do we have a uniform that we can wear?
No.
No. We don't even have a badge that's really recognized by anybody. So we can never carry our gun exposed on our hip. Never. It always has to be hidden. For the Class G license, you're going to go through 28 hours of range and classroom training within the past 12 years. Now, the training for a Class G license is
12 years or 12 months.
12 months. 28 hours of range and classroom training within the past 12 months. Now, the training is by a K firearm instructor. And the importance of that is that there are some courses offered for handgun training by the NRA and by other, but they don't do anything to satisfy the requirements for your G license. Your G license specifically says you have to go to a school like this for Florida, and it has to be taught by a guy that has a K license. Just like you could go online and learn lots about private investigations. You could read all kinds of stuff. But it isn't going to help you towards that certificate you need for the CC.
CC, correct.
The use of deadly force. The use of deadly force is never authorized if you're protecting someone's personal property. One of the questions on the test was, you're hired as a personal bodyguard, you're armed, and you're accompanying a guy, a diamond dealer, and he's got a briefcase full of diamonds. And he leaves you with the diamonds in the hotel room and tells you that he's going to go downstairs and gamble for a while. As he's leaving the door, another guy busts in. He has his gun drawn. He points it at you and he says, "Give me all the diamonds." You give him the diamonds, the guy turns away, boom, you shoot him to get the diamonds back because you don't want to let your client down. You know, in that scenario, I mean, if somebody pointed a gun at me, I would think that I could rightfully, you know, draw and shoot. Although I'm not that type of person, so don't let me try to kid you that I am. I'm not. But the example that I gave is a guy who shot somebody to try to get the diamonds back. He used deadly force to try to get the diamonds. And if your statement to the police officer went something like that, well, the guy started running, so, you know, he had all the diamonds, so, you know, he had already pointed the gun at me once, so I took a shot. You know, it would be better for you to just say, the guy pointed a gun at me, I drew my gun, I fired, he's dead. They said, well, why is he shot in the back? Well, he must have flinched at the last minute, I don't know. He must have turned real quick. But it can't be to protect the diamonds.
Right. It has to, that would probably have to be, you felt threatened that deadly force was about to be used on you,
right? And
you just kind of
reacted.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can never fire a warning shot in the air. We see that on the TV show. Stop. Okay, well, that's against the law. Those bullets do come down.
They do.
They actually puncture people in the head.
And have killed people.
One of the reasons why I don't carry a badge is because I don't want anybody to think that I am impersonating a police officer. I pull out my private investigator ID. I carry it in my wallet. And I just simply say that I'm an investigator.
Okay, that's to show that you are.
Yep.
Picture.
It's just like a driver's license is what it looks like. I don't say I'm a private investigator, I just say I'm an investigator, and I show them my license. I put it right there. If they say, well, he said he was an investigator, I'll say, I showed you my license. She says, yeah, but I thought you said you were a cop. I said, I never said I was a cop. I said, I was an investigator, I showed you my license. Now, in that same scenario, if you just pull out a badge and say, I'm an investigator, you know, people can get a different impression. Now, we are prohibited by law from having a 5-pointed star badge. That's the one that is only reserved for the Sheriff's Department or the U.S. Marshals. 5-pointed star. You won't find anybody else have them. If you're a private investigator and you gotta have a badge, you'll get a shield. You'll get a shield badge that'll say private investigator on it.
By request.
You'd have to order it yourself.
Yeah, so that would just be something for, like you said, if you just want to have something.
Right.
Okay.
You could order it yourself.
There's no requirement at
like
all.
Rafi has one. The use of the state seal, like I said, if we had a shield, we can't even have the scales of justice or the Florida state seal on there. We could have the scales of justice, but we would have to say private investigator. It couldn't have the Florida state seal on it.
Okay. Just a scale, but no state seal.
Well, I just suggested the scale. It's what I meant to say is not a state seal, the Florida state seal. Now, 493, one of the things about 493, it says that we will not divulge any information about our case to anyone else other than the person that hired us. So a police officer comes up to you and says, Willie, what are you working on? I'm working a case. Well, who are you watching? You have to say, come on, Jim. You know I can't tell you that. 493 prohibits it. Say, hey, I wouldn't mind. I'd tell you all about the case because you could probably help me out. You probably know the guy, but the state of Florida won't let me. That's what I always say.
Okay.
I say, I wish I could. Trust me, you could probably help me. The state of Florida won't let me. 493 says it's a second-degree misdemeanor. The last thing I want is someone filing a charge against me when I'm just trying to make a living. So let's keep it simple. Don't ask me who I'm watching. Here's my 2 forms of identification, which I'm required to provide you with, which is my 2 forms: my state license and my company ID. A company ID.
Okay, which will come from your A agency.
Will come from your A agency, that's correct. It's a card claims resource. It's just required to have a contact number on there. It would be like, let's say a guy, you were on the side of the road, police officer found you on the side of the road, and you're giving him a bunch of lip. Okay? And he says, let me see your ID, and you give him your license. Well, your license just says Florida State on it. It says your license. He wants to see your company license, your company ID rather, because he wants to call your boss. You got to have a way to call you out if you're going to be disrespectful or there's a problem. He's going to say, hold on a second. He calls your boss and say, you know what? I'm talking to your investigator out here, and he's giving me a rash of shit. They got to have some way to be able to contact someone who's in charge of you.
Okay.
Now for me, they end up calling my cell phone, and I say, yeah, okay, well, I'll take care of that guy.
One question on that then.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not have a sponsor, however, you have your CC intern license, then you would not have a agency license, so you should not be doing any investigative work. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The only people that can do investigative work or advertise for like put an ad in the paper would be an A agency. Now the A agency will get the work and they'll assign it to their employees, a CC licensed investigator or a C. Mm-hmm. A CC and a C, they can do the same work. It's just that one tends to have more experience than the other.
Okay.
A CC might make $10, $15 an hour. A C is usually making $15, $25 an hour. So the difference.
Because of his experience.
Because of his experience, sure. He's just better at his job. Like Raphael. What do I want to give Raphael? Raphael's a CC. I'm gonna be careful what I give him. I don't want to overload him. Larry Batts in Ocala, 50-year-old grown man, been working in the business for 25 years. I would give him anything. Right. It doesn't matter. Whatever somebody wants done in this industry, I'm going to feed his direction.
And he's a C.
And he's the C, yeah. It's the highest designation he can get.
Yeah.
He can't get any higher.
Unless he goes to an agency and becomes a manager with an M.
Yeah, but he has to keep his C if he wants to work in the field.
Yeah.
Now, in our profession, the highest designation we can get, the professional designation that we can get in our industry is called a Certified Fraud Examiner.
Okay.
That would be a person that was used to working complex fraud cases. Now, you could also get a certified legal investigator if you were looking into, you worked maybe for a law firm and were used to handling different types of legal issues and matters. There's also certified surveillance investigators, guys who do nothing but surveillance and have done it across all genres. They've done it in the woods, they've done it on boats, they've just done every different one. They've done it in cars, in the field, just different undercover. They using little cameras and stuff, or setting up cameras inside of businesses.
So now these would be considered a specialization.
Specializations, certifications, correct. The sponsorship, when someone sponsors you, what he's basically saying is that, hey, I'm going to take you under my wing. I'm going to train you what you need to know. Now, your sponsor is supposed to be within about 50 miles of where you're working. The reason for that is because if you need help, he's supposed to be able to get there in a reasonable amount of time. A sponsor can be not only just a C, but an M can sponsor you too. A person who's a manager in an agency can also be a sponsor.
Wait a minute. A C can sponsor a CC?
Uh-huh. And so can an M. Now, the sponsor only means that you're going to be your trainer. You still have to work for an A agency.
Okay. That was enough to
yeah. Let me explain it to you this way. Let's say you have a barber shop in the mall, and you're the owner of the barber shop. You have your guys that come in and cut hair. They're your barbers. Mm-hmm. They're your C's. Okay? Now, every once in a while, you get a young kid right out of barber school, and he's in there too. He's your CC. You're not going to have him do, the really tough hair. You might give him the simple cuts.
Right.
Maybe some little kids. But when you need all the dye-in, all the special stuff done, you're probably going to give it to your seasoned barber. Okay? Now, as a barber who owns that barber shop, do you want your barber, your main barber, your C, do you want him going into the mall and saying, hey, I'll cut your hair in the mall? If you go into the shop, he's going to charge you $25, but I'll cut it in the mall for $10. Do you want him undercutting your price?
No.
No. Because you have all that invested in your agency, all that invested in all the equipment that you have, all of the knowledge, all the business knowledge you put into building that barbershop. Well, this is my barbershop right here. We're in it. I don't want my investigators going out and working on the side. If they find jobs, I want them to bring it here.
Right, I got you. Okay.
Okay? Because I'm the one that got them in this business. I'm the one that trained them. It needs to stay here because, you know what, if something happens to them out there, if they're soliciting work and they get hurt or something happens, they don't have any insurance. They don't have any coverage. And if something happens, those people are going to look at the state and they're going to see that investigator worked for me. Mm-hmm. So they're going to turn around and they're going to sue me. And I'm going to say, what are you talking about? I never worked your case. And they're going to go, oh yeah, you did. Your investigator was working it. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about that. Well, it can't be like that. You can't not know. Every one of my guys signs a contract that says he works here and he works here only. And he won't work anywhere else or for anyone else.
Without your permission.
Yeah, unless he's...
If they inform you that, say, you know, you have your friends, your connections that are coming back on board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, however, they may if they have their own business and you have a contact that you want them to have to take care of,
right?
They could probably end up doing both, but however, they do know that
they need to be like an employee. They need to be part-time employee here and there.
Yeah, okay.
It's got to be like real legal, real on the books, and real transparent. It can't be anything hidden or sneaky. Because if it's sneaky, you know, that's the thing that we're against. If you're in this business, you're against all the sneaky, you know, double dealing,
double dipping in this and that.
We deal with all those people all the time. I didn't get into this profession because I was the type of person that liked that stuff. You know, so if you want to go work for somebody else, that's fine. You know what? Call me, tell me the case.
Right.
We have no problem. But if I find out, you know, in a roundabout way, well, then you're not going to work for me anymore because you're just not the person that I want.
For all this integrity.
Yeah.
You know, there will be no need not to inform you.
Right.
I'll tell you that, you know, you may work another case with another company. That you all may be in the same network.
Right. And trust me, it all gets around.
Yeah.
You know? It all gets around. We usually always find out what other people are doing. Like, I'll get a call. Somebody will say to me, you know, remember the guy that worked for you? Well, he called me and asked me if I had any work. He should know that all my work just goes to you, John. Why is he calling me?
Yeah.
Like, that frustrates me. If one of my guys decides to start calling my client, trying to get my work from my client. That's why we have a non-compete agreement, which is enforceable. He can't approach any of my clients.
Undercut you.
Right, exactly. All right, what I'm going to leave you with here today is that my little gut feeling thing. You know, overall as a private investigator, you know, sometimes you've heard that they say investigators have a sixth sense. They have this, you know, they just know something's going on. Well, you know, there's nothing magical about that. What it is what we were talking about the other day is patterns of behavior. We learn to study and recognize patterns of behavior, and when something happens, when we're watching something, we say, okay, she's going to do this next. Mm-hmm. We almost know what's going to happen. Well, you know, I'm not afraid to admit it that I have once in a while maybe dozed off just for a second in my car while I'm doing surveillance. But you know, I wake up right at that split second and the person's coming out the door and getting ready to leave. Mm-hmm. Something tapped me on the shoulder and said, John, here we go. Time to start working. So oftentimes you're not sure how the gut feeling came to you, but, you know, trust them. They're usually right. And especially since we're trained to leave no stone unturned. So if you have a suspicion about something, you say, well, you know, she might have done this. Well, go check it out. Mm-hmm. Because if you have this suspicion, well, then it should be on your list of things, on your list of stones to, you know, overturn and see if there's anything under it. So go ahead and do it.
If there's not, then hey, that kills, that eliminates you having that, well, I wonder.
Right. Now, I was telling you earlier about a case where I sent a guy out on a case and they spent 8 hours sitting on a house and came home and told me, you know, that no one was there. And I asked them to talk to the neighbors and find out where the person was. And nobody had any information for them. And I told you that that was not the neighbor's fault. It was the investigator's lack of ability to determine or to obtain information from that neighborhood. So the investigator went back, thinking or telling his client that this person must have been out of town, and that I'm going to need to go back and finish the investigation. So he went back, and since he had a good browbeating by his supervisor about what a poor job he did the first time, the second time back when he got there, the house looked almost the same, unlived in. So he got very aggressive, knocking on doors. And the neighbor who lived behind the house told him, well, those people died. So the husband who had been sick died about 6 or 8 weeks prior to our investigation. And then the wife, who we were doing an investigation on, she died a few weeks after her husband died. You know, sometimes they say about that broken heart, you died of a broken heart. Well, she passed away. So the woman died 6 weeks prior to us even being there. Now, that's information we should have found out the first time. And as a general rule of thumb, if we go out on a case between, what time do we get there?
6 o'clock on weekdays, 7 on weekends.
Within 4 hours, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock's fair game. You don't need to be knocking on people's door at 8 o'clock in the morning. But by 10, after 4 hours, you gotta know, are you sitting on an empty house? Are you on the right house? Have you seen cars there? Has there been lights going on or off inside? Has there, have some windows opened? Have some blinds changed position? Something had to have happened to let you know someone's in that house.
A red flag should be up at that time.
If nothing has happened, you need to get out of your car and figure out what's going on. And hey, it could be as simple as going and buying a couple of newspapers, spending $2-3, grabbing maybe 4 or 5 newspapers, and go to the neighbor, knock on the door, drop it on the ground, go to the person's house that you're targeting, knock on the door, wait and see if they come. And if they come, say hi. I'm with the so-and-so Sentinel. I'm just giving you a prescription of the paper. We're trying to increase subscribership in the area. Have a great day. Move to the next house, knock on the door, drop another paper. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. Just that simple.
Pretty cool trick.
Yeah, basic.
Yeah.
Don't get too complicated. Complications kill things.
Yeah.
Keep them simple. All right. So within 4 hours, you need to know whether you're on an empty house. If that house is empty, now you need to talk to every single neighbor. Where are they? Where did they go? What do they know about them? How long did they live there? Where did he work while he lived there? Now you're aggressive to everybody. Did he have any kids? Where did his wife work? The whole gamut.
So in that case, then now you're not really concerned about someone knowing that you were there.
No. Just say, I'm an investigator, I need to find him. They say, what for? Say, well, I'm trying to serve him some papers. They don't know what it's for.
Yeah.
Serve him some papers? What kind of papers? Well, trust me, I'll grab a couple of notebook papers and hand it to him, So it really doesn't matter at that point. You have to be aggressive. And now we have a general rule of thumb, which even makes it tougher on the investigators so that they don't slack off. We tell them, you know what? You cannot continue this case unless you confirm where they are. So while you're out there, you got to find out, are they out of town? If they are, when will they be back? Or can you get a number of a neighbor and call the neighbor and say, hey, are they back? Are they back? Is their car there? Or you have to plan on your own to kind of run through that neighborhood at some time and say, okay, they're back. And then call your client and just say, hey, I just want to let you know they're back. Now your client says, okay, go ahead with your case. Because if you don't make that requirement, you will have investigators going out Person's not there. They won't find out where they are. They'll go back out again. A couple of days later, the people will still be out of town. They won't know where they are. They'll waste 4 more hours. They'll waste time.
The client is not going to want to pay you for that type of information.
Right. They're not. But the client only finds out about it when the office sends the bill. And then when the client says they're not going to pay for it, the agency is the one that gets stuck with it because chances are he paid the investigator. Or the investigator is going to say, come on, man, I spent all that time. And you got to tell the investigator, yeah, but you didn't do it right.
And you have the tendency of losing a client.
Yep. Yeah.
You losing all the way around.
All right, so I'll leave you with this pretty picture, and we will wrap things up. Any questions?
No. The chapters that I have not gone over, but you may read this.
Read it from cover to cover,
Okay.
please.